Home prices are dropping by 40K, 70K, even 200K in Minnesota. So what's going on? There's got to be a housing crash, right?
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Well, stay tuned because we're about to get after it right now. Seems like no matter where you look in Minnesota, there's going to be price decreases happening pretty much everywhere. Some of the biggest price decreases that we're seeing are in Prior Lake, Woodbury, Champlin, Rogers, St. Michael, and Lino Lakes. But these are great locations, so why would prices be decreasing in those areas? It must mean a crash is coming, right?
Exactly!
Well, the quick answer is no, but let me explain. So I know you're thinking, well, you just said the prices are dropping by 40K, 70K, up to 200K in Minnesota. How could there not be a crash coming? Well, there's a couple factors that play key roles into why there are price drops coming in Minnesota. We'll start off with one of the biggest factors, and that's going to be interest rates. So I know everybody's heard about the interest rates. Even over the last 2 years, they've been just increasing and increasing, seeming like there's nowhere to stop. The reason interest rates are such a big factor into why house prices are dropping is because we haven't seen interest rates between 7 and 8% since the year 2000.
What?
That in itself is going to scare a lot of home buyers, which ultimately leads to my next point, which is there's just not a lot of buyers in general right now. So for those that don't know, obviously the higher the interest rate, the higher your monthly payment is going to be, which ultimately determines what you can afford, thus resulting in people not being able to afford as much compared to what they could a couple of years ago. So this gradually starts to take out home buyers from the market. So with less home buyers in the market, that means homes are going to sit longer. You're not going to have these bidding wars like we did a few years ago where, you're waiving inspections and you're paying appraisal gaps and stuff like that. So like I said, not a lot of competition means there's just less people buying homes. And that's just going to result in homes staying on the market longer. If a seller really wants to move in this type of market, they're going to have to drop the price in order to meet buyers where they're at based on that affordability. With interest rates hovering between 7 and 8% right now, it's really starting to have an effect on home buyers and their purchasing power. What I mean by purchasing power is the lower the interest rate means the lower the monthly payment. The lower the monthly payment means the more home that you can actually afford as a home buyer. So with interest rates going up, that means your monthly payment's going to go up with that as well, which as a result is going to lower your purchasing power or the purchase price of what you can actually afford. So just to give you some perspective, if you bought a home at 3% a few years ago and now you had to buy a home at 7% right now, which would be on the low end right now, that difference in monthly payment would be around $1,000.
Oh.
The fact that the interest rates have gone from 3% all the way to 7% in the matter of 2 years, it's hitting home buyers really quick and pricing them out of the market. And the next factor that actually plays a big role in Minnesota at least is the seasonality. So what I mean by seasonality is every single year, as soon as we hit September, people don't really want to move anymore until beginning of March. This is a cyclical real estate market in Minnesota that is not a rare occurrence. So why would people not want to move? Well, when it comes to Minnesota, people really want to move before their kids get into school starting in September. And then on top of that, as soon as we start to get into the fall, the winter seems to come quicker than you really want it to. So people don't want to move when it's icy, snowing, sub 20 degrees. It's just not ideal conditions for moving. So ultimately that's going to lead to a slower winter market. So I just gave you a lot of info on why the prices have been dropping, but I didn't really explain why it's not going to crash. For one, there's very little inventory right now. What I mean by inventory is just homes for sale. In a balanced market, we're looking at around 6 months of supply for inventory, and right now we're sitting around roughly 2 months of supply.
That might not be enough.
So with only 2 months of supply, that means that there's just not a lot of inventory on the market, which even though there's not a ton of buyers, there's still enough to keep the prices to a stable point. So you might be wondering why there's not a lot of inventory on the market, if it's just because people are scared of the market crashing or stuff like that. Well, The number one reason would be 99% of homeowners that have a mortgage have a 6% or less interest rate. And 72% of them have less than a 4% interest rate. And then on top of that, 28% of them have less than a 3% interest rate.
Is that all?
So why would they want to move if that means that they have to give up their 3% interest rate and then jump to a 7 or 8% interest rate? I just told you that that's $1,000 difference in monthly payment. So right now the market is just in a weird spot where there's not a lot of inventory and there's not a lot of reason for people to move. So the market is staying stable and prices are pretty much staying where they're at, other than as we get into the winter market, that's just a natural occurrence. Now, I don't have a crystal ball as to what's going to happen in the future, but I can confidently say that the interest rates and the inventory are playing the biggest factor as to why there's not going to be a market crash in Minnesota. If you're thinking of moving to Minnesota, but you still have a couple questions about the market, don't be afraid to call or text me. I'll leave my info in the description below. I'd love to help make that move for you to Minnesota as smooth as possible. If you enjoyed the video or you found it helpful, then leave a like, maybe subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.